2019 budget request for the Department of Interior, a budget that many of us find deeply disappointing. It's not just the huge cuts that would hamstring critically important programs like Western drought funding, climate research, endangered species conservation, and land acquisition through the LWCF. This is a budget that places the exploitation of our public lands above any other uses. It undermines national parks and cuts land and water conservation. It turns back the clock on our federal government's role to a time before Teddy Roosevelt, John Muir, and Gifford Pinchot. This is a budget that prioritizes the profit that oil and gas and coal companies can dig, drill, and otherwise wring out of our public lands with no consideration of future generations or the long-term impacts to health and the environment. We're producing more oil and natural gas today than ever before. And now we have so much that we export millions of barrels of crude and billions of cubic feet of gas overseas every day. And yet, according to the priorities in this president's budget, the Interior Department still isn't doing enough favors for oil and gas companies. Every year, average global temperatures get hotter. The Arctic ice cap gets smaller. Storms get stronger and droughts get more severe. Yet, according to the priorities in this budget, the Interior Department had been previously thinking and doing too much to combat global climate change. In over 3,600 pages of budget documents from your department, the phrases climate change and climate impact, climate science, and climate resilience are used a grand total of 31 times combined. 21 of those times are references to programs that are being slashed or eliminated. The new DOI strategic plan eliminates all references to climate change, but makes sure that the first three words in the new departmental vision statement are, to quote, promote energy dominance. That's the kind of vision that leads to opening both the Atlantic and Pacific coast to unwanted offshore drilling. It's the kind of vision that leads to stacking a royalty collection advisory committee with oil, gas, and coal executives, which unsurprisingly led to recommendations to give those industries huge discounts and rip off the American taxpayers for the use of their lands and waters. That's the kind of vision that leads to a cynical proposal to pay for maintenance in our national parks through vastly expanded drilling and mining. You want to fix that leaky roof at the visitor center? Fine. Let's drill a few more oil wells. We should not have to drill our parks in order to save them, especially not when the president is continuing to celebrate the enormous budget holes that he and this Republican Congress just created with their tax cuts. The more you look at this budget, the more offensively misplaced priorities you see. The budget proposes drastic cuts to programs that have helped the U.S. to lead the international fight against wildlife trafficking, replacing these proven efforts with an ill-conceived International Wildlife Conservation Council to carry out the wishes of trophy hunters and the NRA. And now it's gotten worse. Following a lawsuit by the NRA and others, unfortunately, Mr. Secretary, your department has reopened the door for more elephant tusks and lion hides to be imported into the U.S., lifting the ban on these big game trophies on a case-by-case basis. President Trump, who will never be mistaken for a conservationist, rightly described these trophy hunts as a horror show for elephants. And while the department is rolling back protections, ironically, China is stepping up work on international wildlife conservation. So just when our years of pressure and leadership are starting to work in the world community, we are abdicating our leadership role. This decision to allow elephant trophies to be imported reflects an administration under undue influence of the NRA. And we've seen reports that taxpayers recently paid for you to stay at the Four Seasons Resort in Dallas to attend a conference organized by the NRA, where you also reportedly met with several campaign donors. I'm reminded, too, of the decision by political appointees in your department to muzzle the National Park Service concerns about the provisions of the NRA-backed silencer bill. The bottom line is we see a budget here that should uphold strong environmental protections for air, water, wildlife, and natural places, areas where we've been a world leader, but instead this budget would dismantle those things. In so many ways right now, this great agency is mired in chaos, cronyism, and at least the appearance of corruption. That and the upside-down budget priorities surely have TR rolling in his grave. And with that, I yield back.